Hey there, amazing one. How are you? I want to talk to you about your word. What is your word for the year? Every single year for the past, I would say 10 years, there has been a word, a very special word that has presented itself to me for a year. So for me personally, it either starts to really show itself towards the end of a year, through synchronicities, through conversations, through things that are grabbing my attention, that keep coming up for me, things that are quite evident, that are becoming important to me. There are lots of different ways where I can become aware that a word is starting to reveal itself, and that word is for the next year. Or if it doesn't show up by the end of the year, then I know that it's not too far away because it usually shows up in the first half of the year. I don't manipulate that word to show up by a certain date. I just know and trust that the word will show up when it's needed to show up, but also quite often it's not always a word that just pops in for me and I'm aware of it and I'm like, oh, okay, that's my word. As I said, sometimes there's a building process of many different things that happen, many different conversations, many different thought processes that I go through where I realize, oh, that's looking more and more like that's my word. That feels like my word. So, what is this word? A word or a set of words is a really powerful thing that comes to find you, that is relevant just for you as an individual for this coming orbit that you're going to be going through. So, that year. All right. Now, last year, the word that really came through strongly for me was vortex. So concepts around vortex, my understanding of vortex, and what that word did was it revealed itself to me. I understood that my word for the year 2021 was vortex. I understood at the start of the journey into 2021 what that word and the concept of it, its consciousness, what that could mean to me. But what happened, as does what happens every other year, is that as I progress through the year and experience the year, I realize that this word meant more to me than what I just thought at the start of the year. And one of the things that really stood me in good stead was practicing, and it really was a practice for me personally of staying in vortex, staying in my vortex. And another way that shone through for me was staying in my own lane. And what I think you'll find is what everyone finds every year when they go through this same kind of experience with me and use it as an experiment is that no matter what word or set of words that you identify is meant to be for you, is that you'll get a sense for what this possibly means at the start of the year. What we need to remain open to is that it's going to shift and change and other things are going to reveal. So, in other words, we don't want to see a word at the start of the year and think we know everything about that word, why it's coming up, why it's relevant for you, what it means to you. And then, whether we realize it or not, quite often what our minds are really good at doing is saying, oh, well, I figured it all out. So that's it. That's it, full stop. And the mind is very good at putting in a lot of boxes and rules and parameters, and there is no point whatsoever in aligning yourself with a word if we're not willing to go on a journey with that word and let it and expand through it and let it show us how We are designed to expand, how we are designed to evolve with the help of that word. So we listen, we become aware of a word that's going to come in for us, that is going to be for the year, whatever year it is that you're going into. And it might be one word, or it could actually be a couple of words, a phrase, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute. And it'll feel right. It'll really feel right. It will feel like when you hear that word in your mind's eye, when you speak that word, it'll feel like home. It'll feel like the right word, the right fit. That's your word. Okay. Now, quite often people say to me, is it possible to have more than one word? Yes, it is possible to have one word. Keep in mind, though, that sometimes wanting to have more than one word is the mind's way of trying to do a good job at sabotaging us and directing our thoughts and attention, our focus in quite a few different directions, which is very fragmenting and quite often takes us more off journey than aligning us in journey. So can you have more than one word? Yes, you can. However, I want to perhaps just put a suggestion out there. What I have found works well for clients and myself is that you find your one word or your little, very, very short phrase, and you let that be it. And what can grow from that is like you declare, that's my word. But you also now are aware of that from that word, there can be all these other meanings that come from that word, or there can be other phrases, other feelings, other meanings that go into other concepts that could come up and feel quite relevant. And that's all a-okay. So I'll give you a little bit of a example of that. And I'm just diving into my art journal. So I'm going to do quite a few videos coming up very soon, and it's going to involve me diving into my work journal and my personal journal. So you'll see this a bit. So what happens quite often for me is that I'll have my one word, but then the more that that word reveals itself to me, and the more that I contemplate where I have been, I'm doing my review process for the year, I'm contemplating where I am, where I'd like to go, or what I intuitively picking up for the future. There are other words that come up for me, and there are other concepts that come up for me. So you could, if you're feeling like there's more words there, instead of saying, oh, for this year I have 12 words, or for this year I have 4 words, instead of doing that, really give yourself permission to tune into one word and allow your entire body mind complex to embody the consciousness of that word, so it really can learn all it can learn from that word and process it and move into it and evolve. We grow from it. And then what else you can do is you can write a separate, and you can do this however you want to do it. But mine, I did it by saying 2022 is all about, and that's where I wrote those expanded concepts. So for me this year, the word that was coming up very, very strongly for me was light, L-I-G-H-T, light. And other variations of that were lighter or lightness. Now, one of the other words that was coming up for me was stepping out or stepping up. Yeah, stepping into, becoming. They were all different words. So what I did was I picked up the other words that were coming up for me, I acknowledged light was my word, and then I just expanded on those other words, and I freehanded it, and I wrote down, and I'll give you an example of my first one. 2022 is all about stepping out of the darkness and stepping into the light, shining my light and leaving behind what's dark. Now that's so deeply personal for everybody. It sounds very cliche, but when somebody tunes into that for themselves, it's more than likely in relation to a particular aspect of themselves or a particular thing that they do in their life, right? So I actually did up 2 pages like that. The 2022 is all about is more of a kind of like a personal um, musings of the words that came up for me, and that was one of the examples that I just gave you. And then I did up another page which was more what's coming up for me, what are the words, the concepts that are coming up for me collectively for this year, for the collective consciousness. And I actually did a totally separate page for that. So last year, the word that came up for me that I used was vortex. The year before that, the word was connection. The word before that was peace, right? Now, I've started asking some members of the community, especially in the My Incredible Orbit community, what their word is for this year. And it's surprising because a few other people have also really tuned into and had this knowing of light being the word for them as well. Very interesting. So it could be a bit of a thing that we're collectively tuning into that could have not just personal meanings and ramifications for us, but as a collective consciousness in humans. Could be very, very relevant there, is my sense of things. Somebody else really feels drawn to courage. They're really aligned to that courage, and they already could see for them right now in this moment what that courage looked like, and perhaps what it would be in relation to, and how it could help them change, shift, show up. So that was awesome. To give you an example on an extended word, one of the members of the My Incredible Orbit community chose intentional focus. That's beautiful, isn't it? Intentional focus. So if you want to expand on it a little bit, by all the means do that. Somebody else picked worthy, family, and another one that was a little bit longer was breaking free. Now, the word is already there. It's not a hard thing to do. It's not something that you have to sit down and rifle through the dictionary or the thesaurus and or think or ask people for ideas of words, or your word that is for you this year is already connected to you. You are already entangled with this word. You just need to be open enough to it. You need to be able to give yourself the time to be able to sit and be present to allowing this word to reveal itself to you. Every single word has its own consciousness, and that's what this really is about. Is there is this consciousness that is designed to be connected in a relationship with you in a very powerful and divine way this year. And you can invite it in and listen and connect yourself to it and then see what comes forth from that. Or you can carry on your merry way and you will not take the same journey, obviously, from it. I would highly recommend doing it. It is a most revealing thing to do to get to go throughout the whole journey process, but also to get to the end of the year and be able to look back and go, wow, Vortex really showed me this. I changed and I shifted and I released all of this and this and this and this. And this revealed itself to me because I was aware of vortex and what it meant to me that year. Does that word then cease to be a something that you have a relationship with and it doesn't continue on after that year? No. So vortex is still just as important to me this year moving on as it was last year, but it means I've done a lot of work around the concept of vortex and what the consciousness of vortex means to me. Done a lot of work on it, so I am more best friends with it than I've ever been. I'm more comfortable with it than I've ever been. I understand it and its nature and its complexities more than I ever have. But it also means that now that you're on that journey, you'll continue to be on that journey, having that relationship with that concept. And that will continue on its natural process. It now means that because we're moving into the energies of 2022, and it does have its very own unique energies and consciousness, it means that I'm stepping into it and inviting in now what is the most powerful consciousness for me to align with this year, and it's light. That's it. I don't argue with it. I don't challenge it. I don't question it. I don't go, oh, light. What does that mean? That doesn't make any sense. How am I meant to work with that? I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I don't ever disregard a word or a concept. I don't get rid of it because I don't like it or because it pushes my buttons or because it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't get rid of it ever, right? I just allow it to be. I don't try to analyze it. I don't try to overly figure it out. I just absolutely 100% trust that that is the consciousness that I am connected to, and that it is here to help me do this journey in this year, in this orbit, and do it to the absolute best of my capabilities this year. So I would love to know what your word is. I would love to know what your word is. And if you have any questions about that process whatsoever, please drop it into the comments and I'm happy to start a conversation about that. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.